Signs of Doom in Digital Transformation, a tech pioneer's journey beginning as a mechanic, and the good, the bad, and the ugly of QuickBooks. Those are just a few of the topics we're going to cover here in episode number 144 of Transformation Ground Control.
This is Transformation Ground Control, your source for all things business, technology, strategy, and change. If you're growing your business, leading change within your organization, or undertaking any sort of operational or technology change initiative, this podcast is for you. This show covers what you need to know about digital transformation, organizational change, operational improvement, and business growth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. Kyler, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited for today's episode.
Likewise, I'm excited as well. This is episode 144. You can find new episodes every Wednesday. You can also find past episodes of this show by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. Great show for you planned today. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy components of transformation. So whether you're going through a digital transformation or an ERP implementation or any sort of tech initiative within your organization, this podcast is for you. So today's topics are pretty widespread. We're going to start off our opening segment with questions from the audience. So we're going to take questions that have come to us via social media, and then we'll get into a couple hot topics. We'll talk about signs of doom within digital transformation and how to fix them, as well as signs of failure and what to do about that within your tech initiative or digital transformation, ERP implementation, or whatever it is you're going through. And then later in the show, we'll have our first guest, who's Eyal Katz from Priority Software. He's going to be on the show discussing his journey going from being a mechanic to a tech pioneer and an entrepreneur and someone who sold his software company to a bigger software company called Priority Software. So we are going to discuss with him that whole journey, and he's joining us from Israel, from Tel Aviv, Israel. He'll be joining us here later today. And then last but not least, we'll have Kristy Barber on the show from the Third Stage Consulting team. She'll be on to discuss the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. A lot of our small and mid-market clients are still using QuickBooks or trying to move away from QuickBooks or trying to figure out how to optimize it. So we'll talk about, what some of the considerations are there. And that's also relevant even if you're not using QuickBooks too as well. We'll talk about some of the considerations that you need to keep in mind as you go through and evaluate your current systems and look to potential replacement options as well. So all that being said, let's jump into some of the questions you've got for us here today, Kyler.
Absolutely. Well, we have our audience questions segment, which these are not just questions for Eric, they're for our audience joining us today. So I encourage you to pop your answer and join the conversation in the comments. If you would like your question or comment featured on Ground Control, please feel free to comment on either the Third Stage Consulting group social media or Eric Kimberling social media. We actually pull the questions from a variety of those. So if you'd like the question to make sure it gets in the next episode, go ahead and tag me or Eric and we'll pull those in. But some great questions from our audience today, as always. So our first question actually comes from one of your topics on YouTube, which is around change management and how to more effectively manage change. And this question is about change measurement. So how do you manage the change effectively in terms of measuring the hard components of the organization? So hard components typically would mean strategy, solution, and then actually hard metrics behind how do you measure change. So I thought that was a really good question. We also have some videos on this on our YouTube channel and some previous episodes if you really want to kind of dive into the metrics around change, but I thought I'd bring it up here, Eric, for you to kind of give us a high-level answer to that question.
Yeah, so change management is oftentimes thought of something that's very subjective and hard to quantify, right? It's sort of a feeling within an organization, a feeling of are people adopting the software? Are people happy with the user experience, all that kind of stuff? But I'm not a believer in just sort of going with subjective information that's open to interpretation or open to too much interpretation. So we do try to quantify as much as we can within an assessment of an organization's readiness and just the overall change management journey. And so what we typically do is we will quantify through surveys, which are online, anonymous surveys where we actually do measure people's responses to different questions. So you're taking something that is somewhat subjective and you're turning it into a bit of a science. So at the very least, you don't need to necessarily get too caught up in the exact number and whether or not we have a precise number to measure a precise aspect of change management. But what it does do is it allows us to look at trends, it allows us to look at benchmarks to compare to other companies, and it also allows us to look at how your own team benchmarks to each other. So you might have different parts of your organization that represent sort of pockets to resistance or pockets of resistance within an organization. And by measuring through surveys, some of those outputs or some of those results, that's going to allow you to do that benchmarking and really get a better sense of where the pockets of resistance are going to be and where your change efforts should really focus. So it's a way to really take that subjective topic of change management and turn it into something a little bit more scientific, a little bit more metrics based. But it's a great question.
Absolutely. Definitely a really good question and a really good just overall strategic approach to be mindful of
Yeah.
when you're integrating change management, that there are actually metrics to measure from. So great question. Thank you so much. Excited to hear from our audience too about the measurement of change. So let's move on to another question that actually comes from the overall times old argument of waterfall versus agile. So this user asked, is there a hybrid approach that helps in overcoming risks associated with agile, but not full traditional waterfall? So I thought that was a really good question to ask you and our audience today to say, can you have the best of both worlds?
Yeah, in fact, that's what we're seeing most organizations do now is they're taking more of a hybrid approach. And I think it's a smart way to try and get the best of both worlds, to use your words, and to hit that point, which is that you can still do, the benefit or the things that are valuable within waterfall. So waterfall, for those that don't know, waterfall is an approach where you have more of a sequential milestone based approach to digital transformation. So you go through your requirements gathering, for example, you define your end-to-end business processes and requirements, and then you have a milestone or a sign off, and then you move into the design and build phase of the technology. Agile is a little bit different in that Agile would say, well, let's just start building stuff. Let's get it out to the user community as fast as possible. And then we'll take their response or their reactions to it and their feedback to it. And then we'll pivot, we'll rebuild the software, tweak it however we need to. So that's the Agile approach. And so there's this whole debate going on in the industry of should we do Agile as a way to mitigate the risk of taking too long to go through a digital transformation. And it's a valid concern. It's a valid theory. But the problem is if you let the pendulum swing too far the direction of Agile, you miss out on some of the benefits of waterfall. And if you stick with waterfall too much, you're going to miss out on the benefits of Agile. So what a lot of organizations end up doing is they will do waterfall up front. So they'll define their end-to-end processes and sort of have that big picture blueprint of how processes are going to flow, what the requirements are, what the overall tech stack and the tech deployment is going to look like longer term. But then when they get into deploying the software, they go into more of an agile mode where they start to implement quickly and they start to get the feedback and they start to pivot and adjust and all that good stuff. So there are ways to do both. I think you just have to be clear on what it is you're doing. And if you see a vendor that's too far to one side or too far to one extreme, you may want to ask them to kind of bring it back to wherever you want to be. And by the way, even if you're in the middle, even if you take a hybrid approach, you still have to kind of figure out where on a spectrum or a continuum you might fall as an organization, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. If you want more flexibility and speed, you probably are going to lean a little bit more towards Agile. If you're looking to standardize and get more efficiencies and economies of scale and just to scale your overall company, you're trying to act like one company, then taking a more of a waterfall mindset or erring on the side of more waterfall is going to be the right recipe for you as an organization. So you also have to do some soul searching on what it is you want and then figure out which approach or which end of the spectrum you might fall.
And Eric, as a follow-up question to that, a hybrid strategy sounds like there's a lot of gray area. So is there a certain framework or how do you create alignment around the actual hybrid that you're going to use as far as an implementation strategy?
Great question. I mean, really what you want to do is back up and forget about Agile and waterfall for a minute. And before you make that decision, back up and understand, what is it we're trying to be here? What is it we're trying to accomplish with this digital transformation, first of all, and are we aligned on that, second of all? So I'll give you an example. A lot of times we have clients or we've had clients in the past where the CEO of the company will say, we are doing this project to become one company. We're a big company. We've grown through acquisitions. We have all these disparate operations. Now we want to start to act like one company. And that sounds great. That's a fair mission and a fair vision for where you want to go strategically. But then what ends up happening is then the CIO comes in and says, okay, I'm going to lead a digital transformation. I'm going to go out and find some software vendors and some implementers, all that stuff. Implementers and software vendors come back with this agile framework that's supposed to speed things up and minimize risk and get more immediate value and all this great stuff that sounds good on paper. But what you've done now is right there, you've got misalignment. You've got a conflict because the CEO is saying that he or she wants this standardized model going forward. CIO is going down the path of this agile, let's create stuff quickly. Let's not worry about end-to-end processes and let's just be flexible. And that's running counter. So that's why you have to get the executives in a room, first of all, and define not only what does that mean when the CEO says they want that standard operating model across the board. What does that mean? Does that mean really every part of your business is going to be that way? Or maybe there's just certain parts of your business that are standardized, certain parts that are going to stay flexible or disparate or whatever you want to call it. And you've got to align on that and sort of flesh that out as a team, as an executive team first, get alignment on that. Then you start to go to the market and say, okay, we're going to go through digital transformation. Let's look at proposals that best support that strategy that we're going for, rather than creating misalignment by getting random proposals that don't match what your strategy is.
Absolutely. Definitely something that engaging an outside advisor that is experienced is a great opportunity to kind of create your own hybrid, because it's a great option, but it makes sure that you are able to define and align on the option, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
so our last question today, speaking of those vendors, this is on the vendor cartel that you did your video on. If you haven't watched it, it's a great video. Highly recommend it. Just go to Eric's YouTube channel and search cartel. But this is a great question. We've actually seen this in some of our client work. You actually brought in a client that this happened to one of our executive workshops. And we were able to talk to them. And it was one of the most memorable times that I really remember kind of this situation. But this user asks, what should you do when the cartel, quote unquote, environment takes away a company's ability to manage their own IT strategies and road mapping? And even worse, some companies are so invested monetarily and emotionally that they have complete blinders on. How do you ensure that you still own your project without completely losing it to the vendor's sneaky sales method or support methods? So very big question, but a good one.
That is a really big question and a really good one too. It's very difficult to answer. It's such a good question, but in some ways it's difficult. In some ways it's not difficult to answer. But I'd say that the thing that this person is onto is the dynamic. There's a really important dynamic that this person is alluding to that happens organizationally. It's sort of like an organizational behavior and an organizational psychology thing that happens in a lot of companies, which is executive team knows there's a problem or an opportunity to improve their business. So they go to, a big name consulting firm like Accenture, Deloitte, or whoever, insert big consulting vendor or big consultant name here. Doesn't matter who, but one of those big consulting firms. And they think, okay, this outside consultant's going to bring in these outside perspectives. They're going to allow us to think differently and go a different path and, take our business to new heights. That's the intent. Big consulting firm comes in with their own agenda, which is, how do we sell a certain type of software? How do we sell a digital transformation to this client? Because that could be a long-term client and a long-term money maker for us. So it sort of comes in with this outside, what's perceived as an outside perspective, but there's really an internal self-interest that's coming into conflict with the strategy of the organization that hired the consulting firm. So it's sort of like I don't want to say it's misleading, but it is. It's misleading, maybe unintentionally, but it's misleading a client into thinking that, there's certain things that we have to do if we want to survive. We have to go through a digital transformation. We have to do it now. All our peers are doing it. And so it creates a sort of pressure and this urgency that may or may not be real. And then what ends up happening is then, executive team gets sold on that idea, that vision, and then they go down that path, but they sort of outsource the strategy, they outsource the execution and the day-to-day to this third party. And they sort of lose control of their company in a lot of ways. And it turns into a big money pit and gets off track. That's sort of the stereotypical generalized dynamic of how a lot of big ERP projects and digital transformations fail and get off track is because of that dynamic. It's you've lost control. You forgot to look at yourself and say, okay, yeah, we do want to look outside the company and understand what's going on trend wise and all that stuff. We also have to look at who we are. What's our strategy? What are we trying to accomplish, and what's going to best align with that, and start there versus what's everyone else doing, or what is a big, SAP system integrator think we should do. I'll tell you right now and save you a lot of money. Go to an SAP integrator. I'll tell you what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you to implement SAP. So hopefully I just saved you $1 million by telling you right now what they're going to tell you. So free advice here on transformation ground control. No, but that's the sort of dynamic you have to be aware of.
$1 million.
Yes, I just saved you all $1 million each. Sort of.
Oh, well, I mean, that's such good advice. And actually, the case study you brought to us as an executive team was the really polar end of that, is that the software vendor and company, I think it was SI, actually owned the integration. So that was their own intellectual property. So, all of those conversations of not only understanding that, but that's so outside, like you would never think that would happen, but it is something that they utilize to be able to be in a monetary relationship with clients. So definitely so important to do your due diligence before entering in those relationships, and have that level that we call it here at Third Stage of professional skepticism, understanding that these are important partners that are here to help you, but the ownership still lies with the company. So
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely a great question. And thank you. Thank you for all of those excellent questions. Just a reminder, if you want to ask a question on transformation ground control, you can go ahead and tag Eric, myself on any platform, or just comment on the social media platforms for Third Stage Consulting Group, and also Eric Kimberling. We're always excited to engage with our audience, and we'll pull some great answers out of the content here too. So I know, but we have some great hot topics. Speaking of those kind of doom and gloom situations that are actually built around failure. And the reason we like to talk about failure so much is because there's so much you can learn from it. And, it's really an epidemic of failure in the digital transformation world. So with these hot topics, we wanted to bring some red flags that you can look for, but also some strategies you can implement to ensure that you avoid failure at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get to those hot topics here in just a moment. We're going to talk about signs of doom and how to fix them, and then also signs of failure and how to deal with that dynamic within transformations. And then later in the show, stay tuned, because we're going to have Eyal Katz from a company called Priority Software. He's going to be on the show talking about his entrepreneurial journey in the tech space, starting off as a blue collar sort of a worker, and then starting his own entrepreneurial tech startup, and then ultimately selling that company. So we're going to talk about his journey and his advice that he would give to us as tech consultants or tech professionals, I should say, within the space here. And then last but not least, later in the show, after Eyal's on the show, we'll have Kristy Barber from the Third Stage Consulting team. She'll be on talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. And that's going to be an important conversation, whether you're on QuickBooks or not. Quite frankly, doesn't really matter. It's more relevant to you if you are on QuickBooks, but it's also about, what to consider and how to evaluate, how to think about your current systems and what you do about potentially replacing those current systems too. So we'll get to those guests here in just a moment. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Eyal at Cheatham. You can find new episodes of the show every week at transformationgroundcontrol.com. We stream live to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we also drop the audio versions every Wednesday to all the audio podcast platforms throughout the world. And so you can just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to see the aggregated view of all those different sources of finding the podcast. So we've got some hot topics, some really interesting ones that are sort of coming off the Halloween holiday that just happened here recently in much of the world. So we're kind of sticking with that theme. What are some of the hot topics you've got for us here today, Kyler?
Well, first, I want to talk about why digital transformations fail. And of course, we have a ton of content just in the marketplace around why digital transformations fail because so many of them do. So, obviously, everyone in the industry, there's kind of an urgency to figure out why. Why do these so expensive, resource, monetary, heavy investments fail? So, there's a few that I wanted to share with you from this recent article from Tech Target actually. And I just want to share some numbers so we can kind of get the landscape of this impact. So in actually a Statistica research study that companies spend $1.6 trillion or spent in 2022, which is expected to reach 3.4 trillion with a T, which is not even like measurable by 2026. So obviously a lot of financial money going into these specific projects. And some recent McKinsey research found that the long-term impact of the transformation is much rarer than you think. So survey respondents found 56%, so the majority, said that their organization has achieved most or all of their transformation goals, but only 12% report that they have sustained these goals for more than 3 years. So that's something I kind of want to dig into today. So they actually put it into 3 different buckets of failure that I want to share with you, Eric, and then get your reaction of. So the first bucket is called regression or transformation washing. So this is when businesses say they are transforming, but are embarking on initiatives that should have been done or implemented a while ago, things like e-commerce or something like digitization. The next bucket is called underperformance. So this is when businesses think small and really don't put enough focus on projects that can create new value for their business, getting some digital transformation benefits, but on a very, very small scale. So a more kind of phased approach. And then the last bucket is actually digital product or service failure. So this is a situation where companies try but fail to launch a new digital product or digital service and are really forced to discontinue it. So those, according to this research, a late research from McKinsey, are kind of those 3 buckets of why digital transformations fail. So those are kind of different than a lot of times how we characterize them here at Third Stage. So I wanted to get your reaction and kind of get the audience reaction to those 3 greater buckets of why digital transformations fail.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So could you summarize the 3? If you just summarize the three buckets real quick, so I can come back to them.
Sure, absolutely. So the 3 buckets again are the regression or transformation washing, the underperformance, or the digital product or service failure?
Well, I think digital product or service failure, I'll start there. Digital product or service failure is a common one. It's become more common lately with a lot of vendors that started off on-prem and they've moved to the cloud. The whole reason for that being not because the cloud is inferior by any means, but it's because these are rewrites of the software in many cases going to the cloud. Now, this comment is not true for the more mature SaaS and cloud products that have been in the cloud for extended periods of time. So when you think about companies like NetSuite or Salesforce or Workday, those are 3 big enterprise technology vendors that started off in the cloud. They've always been in the cloud, and this is nothing new for them. Whereas when you look at like SAP S4HANA or Microsoft D365, Oracle Cloud, maybe lesser so Oracle Cloud, but especially Microsoft D365 and SAP S4HANA, you've got issues with legacy maturity, legacy R&D dollars that have not yet made the jump into the cloud. So that's why you are starting to see some of those breakdowns there. Now, so I think you do have to look at the product, the maturity of the product, not just the long-term roadmap going forward, but what can you get today versus longer term. And then the first one, tell me the first one again. It was transformation, something with washing or
Yeah, so regression or transformation washing. So things that should have been implemented a while ago, but are kind of being wrapped into a digital transformation project.
And I think there, maybe if I just broaden it or maybe take a slightly different approach there than what the study's looking at is I would say it's digesting what's appropriate for your organization when it's appropriate for your organization. So it could be that you're playing catch up and that you're just simply trying to get basic fundamental technologies in place. If that's the scope or the extent of the early stages of your digital transformation, that's okay. Then do that, certainly. But what happens is a lot of times organizations overcommit, or they try to jump too far, and they start to, for example, look at AI and automation and all this stuff that may be a future state technology to get to. But if you can't close the books and just do basic, end of month journal entries and things like that in your technology, and you can't automate that, then don't worry about AI and stuff like that until you can figure out the basic stuff first. So I think that's part of why organizations struggle is just knowing what technology to consume and when. And then what's that third one that we haven't talked about yet? The third category?
It's underperformance. So this is kind of what that statistic said in the beginning of, you don't see the long-term benefits, right?
And is that on the implementation side? Is that what that's referring to? The implementation underperformance or the technology itself?
The implementation underperformance. So not getting the full benefits or the metrics and strategic alignment around what you thought you were going to get as far as impact, but you're not reaching that.
Yeah. And I think the other two sort of feed into this. I mean, if you have problems in the other two buckets, which is the product or the technology piece, as well as the other component that we talked about, as far as the timing of when you consume technology, then it's going to create underperformance. So I almost view that one as sort of a symptom of other issues. But at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do, is accomplish business value and get an ROI from what your investment is. And you're trying to manage your investment, make sure you're not overcommitting dollars and time and all that stuff. So I think that's a huge problem, but that's, in my view, sort of the surface or the symptom that you're trying to get to the root cause of.
Yeah, really trying to get that prescription of how you achieve those long-term goals. So an interesting way to look at failure. I'm curious to hear from the audience of what you think the main cause of failure is too. And maybe we can aggregate some of those and take a look at them. But moving on to those signs of doom and gloom and how you fix it. So I wanted to share kind of a newer take on a few of these doom and gloom signs. And then actually look at a specific case study to look at how those actually affect businesses. So the one I wanted to share with you from this Information Week article talks a little bit about the internal team. So this sign of failure or ways to fix it is an internal team that doesn't know the direction of the transformation, but also the delivery strategy. If a company doesn't have any internal talent with specific capabilities to manage the software, then they should hire someone that does, or an advisor and coach through transformation to come up with kind of the new state of their IT team or overall talent. And we talked a little bit about this case study failure in a previous ground control episode. So if you search Miller Coors wherever you get your podcast, you can see kind of our ground control feature on that. But Miller Coors really learned this the hard way in 2013 after spending $100 million on a failed ERP implementation without internal expertise or advisors to really steer the transformation and guide their implementation partners. So kind of the root of this cause is the need for that guiding of implementation partners, or that managing of outside resources to ensure that you're looking at those signs of failure and being able to manage it too internally. So kind of, building off of the question that we have earlier, how do you ensure that you really align on that internally to make sure that you're preparing for that ability to be completely independent within your digital transformation?
Yeah, and I think that's why you have to look to your partners too and understand which outside third parties you're working with. If you're working with a value-added reseller or system integrator that specializes in or is commissioned to sell certain products, you're going to get a mindset and a mentality that's sort of a product-first mentality of, this is the software, this is how it works, these are quote-unquote best practices that don't exist, by the way. But these are best practices that are in the software, and therefore you should use them. It's sort of that product first, tech first mentality. That's really the root cause of what gets so many companies and teams into trouble is that they look at the technology first and they believe outside consultants that tell them they should look at technology first and follow those best practices and then, move forward from there. So I think having someone that's agnostic, that isn't afraid to say, wait, hold on a minute, why are we trying to force fit the technology in this part of your business when it doesn't fit? That's a conversation that most teams should be having that many are not. And it's hard to have that conversation, and you won't have that conversation when you have someone who's biased, whose job is to ensure that you use as much of a certain type of technology as possible. So having someone that can sort of not run interference, but really help guide and be that trusted advisor that's looking at your business, and figuring out what the best fit is, and it has that broad universal view of the market to know that there's better options out there that might fit into a certain scenario or might help augment your core enterprise technology stack. That's the kind of mentality you need, is someone who's only getting paid by you, the client, and is not being commissioned by the software vendor, or hasn't built an entire practice committed to supporting just one software solution.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Even if they are independent and they're supporting just one solution, there's a bias there, right? So a great point, and great hot topics. If you have more hot topics you'd like to cover, please feel free to drop them in the comments here, and let us know what your doom and gloom signs are for transformation failure, so we can pull some of those as well. And the rest of this episode will be really helpful in kind of laying the groundwork to ensure that you have that strong foundation, because that's going to be the main deterrent to failure, right? Is an aligned and strong implementation plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear from the audience, what the biggest signs of failure are, the biggest causes of failure are. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Love to see what additions you have there. Well, good. Well, hopefully we can avoid talking about or avoid seeing these doom and gloom failure types of scenarios by following some implementation best practices. So thank you. Even though I just said best practices don't exist, they do exist when it comes to implementation in general, but they don't exist when it comes to software functionality. So anyway, I'm getting lost in the weeds here with my own language. So good stuff there with the hot topics. Look forward to our next guest who's going to be on the show. He's going to be Eyal Katz, who is with Priority Software. He's got a really interesting story of how he started in his career about 30 years ago, close to 30 years ago, as a mechanic in the Israeli army. And then he quickly learned technology and became enamored with or gravitated toward technology, and ultimately started a software company that became successful, and then it was acquired by another company. So we're going to talk to him about his personal journey as a technology entrepreneur, as well as just talk to him about some of the trends in the market and just sort of what to be thinking about as you consider potential software solutions in the marketplace as well. So we'll have Eyal Katz here in just a moment. And then later in the show, after Eyal's on the show, we'll have Kristy Barber from the Third Stage Consulting team, who will be with you, Kyler, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. So be sure to stick around for that. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us, or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I'm gonna leave it all out there and I'm gonna leave it all out there.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can see the current episode as well as all the past episodes as well at transformationgroundcontrol.com. So excited for our next guest, who's a first-time guest on the show. His name is Eyal Katz. He was the founder of a company called Soft Solutions, which was then acquired by a company called Priority Software. And Eyal is based in Israel. His company is an Israeli company that was then acquired by another Israeli company called Priority Software. And strangely enough, I was actually supposed to be in Tel Aviv hosting or conducting this interview this week. We had it planned for several months, obviously, until the war broke out. And then once the war happened, we decided that it probably was a terrible idea for me to travel to Tel Aviv, although I would have loved to, but not a good idea at this moment in time. So we thought we'd still have the interview, but just do it remotely here from afar, from different continents here. So excited to have Eyal on the story to talk about his career journey and his path, as well as just his view of technology and technology trends in general. So with all that being said, Eyal, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first of all, before we get started, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the company you founded, which is called Soft Solutions, which was then acquired by Priority Software. So maybe tell me a little bit, just at a high level, about your background and a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, I'm 50 years old. I think I started about 30 years ago, back when I was in the Army. So it was a long journey, actually. I started by mistake in the Army. I'll talk about the coincidence of that. And then I founded a company that was doing software for business companies, transformed to another company that went for medical software. And then after that, I founded Soft Solutions, first as a software house that does projects, going on from projects and moving to products, and then from products moving into a platform. And at the end of the story, as you said, doing a lot of projects with Priority, creating the add-ons for Priority, and then at the end of the day, Priority acquires Soft Solutions, and now we're happy to be part of Priority Software. That is the major, most common ERP in Israel, and of course in many places in the world too.
Right. Yeah, and we're going to get into that too. Talk a little bit about Priority and what Priority does, and some of your philosophies on technology in general. But before I jump into my questions, maybe just to sort of off topic a little bit, but on a lot of people's minds right now is certainly your safety is of interest to us. But how are things going in Tel Aviv right now? Everyone's staying safe and out of harm's way for the time being?
Yeah, Tel Aviv is in the center district. Things are, pretty normal over here, as normal as it can get. And here in Priority offices, most of the people are coming to work. We're trying to continue, business continuity. And people are basically coming over here. And I think coming to work is a very important thing now, because we want to keep the economy up and running. And then people, when they come to work, this is what they're on their mind, and they don't think about other stuff. So I think it's very important for people, to get out of the homes and continue business as usual, support the customers, and just continue living the life as let's say as regular as possible.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Well, I appreciate that you're safe and that everyone is okay there with you and your team. Just as a quick side note, I hate to say this, but I'm already seeing some political comments in the chat. I will not address those. I'm not here to talk about any of the political underpinnings here, so I'm not going to address those. I'm not going to get to those questions. So if anyone has comments and that sort of thing about the rightness or wrongness of the war, that's not what I'm here to talk about. So just to get that out on the table here. Now, I do want to maybe just to set the stage. This whole story is interesting because you have sort of a non-traditional background. You didn't come up the typical career path. You didn't go to college, and then we were talking right before the podcast about how you did not go to college, go to an entry-level job, move your way up, the corporate ranks that way. You took a slightly different path. Maybe tell us about how you started out and how you ended up in the tech space.
Well, I think it was back when I was actually 16 years old, and I wanted a motorcycle, and my parents didn't want me to get a motorcycle, so I was at school, and the only way I could get it was drop out of school, come to work in a motorcycle shop, and actually get a motorcycle from there. Then I can start, I think, back then as an entrepreneur when I said, okay, you know what? I studied how to fix engines, and I opened my own shop and started fixing lawnmowers and chainsaws and stuff like that, and was making pretty decent money as a teenager. So moving forward, in Israel, after you hit 18 years old, you're drafted to the army. So I started in the army and got to this ammunition base that was actually, I was supposed to handle, let's say, the ammunition in the bunkers and stuff like that. And there was a computer system over there. And it was kind of, boring over there. There's nothing too much to do. So I tried to actually make the system work, but it didn't work. So what actually I did was purchase the book of the programming language that was written and studied the language, and like a motor. And the way I learned to teach myself is by assembly and disassembly, like trial and error. So I actually start trial and error, and we wrote a new application for handling inventory and stock for the Army. So a bunch of generals came to see how everything became digitized. They said, okay, if you have this talent, then why not use it for other stuff? And I said, okay. Then I want my own job, and I want to go to this specific courses in an R&D unit, and said, everything you want, you can have. And that did the transformation from just being a regular soldier to do R&D stuff and pushing the software I created for the Army, and even continuing in the reserves. So that's like the Army phase.
Right.
The next thing that was supposed to happen was I was supposed to get discharged, or getting out of my 3 years that was mandatory. And then they told me, okay, what am I going to do now? I dropped out of high school. I needed to complete my SATs, go to college. It's going to take me 5 years. So the reasonable thing to do back then was, you know what? Maybe I should start my own business, my own software house. And this will give me the opportunity to do the shortcut. Don't go through the 5 years of education and then start from the bottom and build yourself up. Just start from the big. Just start as an entrepreneur. Open a company, and nobody will ask your credentials.
Right.
I'll just take any job there is there. I'll come to a company and say, "What do you need?" And it said, "No problem. Everything. Give me a few days, and I'll come up with a solution." And this is the way I started to grow the business. Started getting into more projects, and so on. So this is like, let's say, the first stages of how I got to the technology.
Okay. Now, is that you started your software company right after you left the military? Did you go straight to start your own company? Okay. So that's you sort of created your own path or your own career. That's an interesting and a smart way to handle it. Very interesting. So it sounds like it started from a continuous improvement mindset. You were trying to fix a problem that existed in the military or opportunities for improvement that you saw, and then that sort of led to you going down the path of technology. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know too much back then. I remember the first I came to this major company in the food industry, and they'll say, we need a program, we need an application, an EIS application for our managers, and I said we needed to do it in Visual Basic back then. I said, no problem. Later on, I just looked up what is an EIS system. I didn't even know what they were talking about.
Right.
So yeah, again, I started to learn Visual Basic at the moment I got the sales order or the purchase order back then. And after a month or two, I came with the product, and that's how I won the tender and continued to the next step.
Okay. So you didn't have a specific software solution in mind when you started the company. You were just starting a company that could solve problems, and you would go seek out the opportunities to solve those problems, and then you would build a technology that solved the problem. Was that your mindset at the time when you started it?
Yeah, I remember I had a motorcycle. I print out business cards. I would go to 100 business places, companies, leave my business card. Out of 100, one came back. And each time I would get a project like that. The next leap I had was I actually had a doctor from oncology department that was looking for software for managing the department, what we call computerized patient records. And so I met with her and I said, okay, let's start to do something. And every meeting, we do the analysis and there's more and more needs. And I say, okay, this is something, it's not scalable. And for each department, it's something else. I have to invent something new, think out of the box. And this is when I went with the idea of building questionnaires. A questionnaire that will give the option to build a system that can work in every department, because every head of a department can build his own questionnaires in the checklist they're doing for patients. And then each department will get his own database with it whatever he needs. And then it went viral. Like many hospitals, let's say government hospitals, started acquiring the software. It was our first product, actually. And then one of the CIOs of one of the major hospitals in Israel said, you know what, this is very brilliant. Nobody has done it before. Let's become partners. And this is the first time I actually sold 49% of my company. Back then it was 1996, 1997. And this has got me started, with the concept of thinking about how to do products. And this is how I first thought about how about you do things that are scalable, not doing just projects, doing products. And when you have a product, again, it's selling itself.
So what you made that transition from solving kind of unique one-by-one problems that you were building solutions for. So that project-based mindset, you switched to this product-based mindset. What was the focus of the products at the time? Was there a certain niche or function that you decided that this is the first area that I think has the most opportunity for me to build a company around, or how did you make that transition?
Yeah, I think the moment I did, the transition of, there's the opportunity, the moments I did the transition to create a product, and I did it for the hospital, I said, I'm going to focus on this specific niche. It's going to be called CPR, EPR, computerized patient records. And it's a need that's all around the world. So this has got me started. And at the end of the day, I think I had the former CIO of this major hospital. I was with her for 3 years. And then I said, okay, this is enough. I don't have, I think I majored in all the section of EPR, CPR. And I said, I need to go to the next stage. And I said, I want to go back to the business, to companies, leaving the healthcare behind. And this is when I did the transition and actually opened Soft Solutions.
Gotcha.
And Soft Solutions started again. I started, getting projects and thinking about how can I create a product. So the first thing, I think it was back in 2002 or 2003, what came out back then was mobile devices with Pocket PC, later on with Windows Mobile. And I said, okay, this is a very nice niche. I think I can do something with it. So I actually started doing stuff for warehouse. And this is where I actually met Priority. For the first time I met them, I was telling them, I know how to do projects for mobile devices. There were no smartphones back then, it was mobile devices only. And what I actually did, I was creating a project for a warehouse. But again, it was doing it each time a project. And then I told them, you guys in Priority, you know what? Let's think about a product. And one of the customers, I think, said, we're looking for a WMS system. And this is the first time, I think, the guys in Priority said, you know what? Let's take this concept of creating, turning from a project to a product, and this is how we generated the WMS system. Priority was actually building the back office, and we're building the client side. So doing that, this is the first product we did as an integrated system. This is actually when I thought, you know what? There should be only a single point of truth. What does it mean? It means that there are a lot of third-party products over there. This is like a path. I can either create a third-party product and integrate to multiple ERPs, but it's always going to be a project because there's always the integration project behind the scenes. And I said, okay, let's do now an integrated product. There is no database. There's no synchronization. It's just an add-on on the ERP system. And back then, it was pretty new. Nobody had this option or this solution. So we started selling WMS, and it was like an easy sell. It's an add-on. You give them the license, and it start working. And he said, okay, if we solve this, let's do the full supply chain. So we created another 3 products. One was for sales reps. The other one was for field service, and the last one was for truck drivers. So we had now the full supply chain support, and this was going pretty well. But still, when you're doing a product, the problem is that you're working with customers, and they always bug you with, we need to this modification. So you create a configurator, doing all kind of best practices. You can configure the system, but at the end of the day, you're always, you're running around your tail. You're trying to, serve the customers. So this is when I said it's not scalable. I need to bring something more to the table, and this gave me the idea to do the transformation from product to platform. The concept of creating a platform was actually giving our resellers all around the world and even our end customers the option to actually customize everything they want and be self-sufficient. And this is really scalable because this gives you now the option to actually now, push your product and everybody can customize it. Sometimes I'm amazed, I'm coming to my customers and they come and show me, look what we did. Look what we did the platform we created. Look what we did for production. Look what we did for, for customers, for vendors, for suppliers. So I think now I think it was like selling itself and it was like multiplying all the time. So
right. We're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software talking about his journey from being a mechanic to becoming a technology entrepreneur and pioneer in the industry. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Cheatham, and we're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software having a conversation about his journey in the technology space as a technology entrepreneur. Let's jump back into the conversation. Now, at the time you developed this warehouse management system and some of the other functions like field services and some of the things you just described, had you sold your company to Priority by this point, or was Priority an investor, or were you just partnering with Priority to create that initial WMS product, that warehouse management system?
I was an ISV first, so
Okay.
I was creating the product, but we're actually selling it as a Priority add-on, as a Priority product, and all the retailers around the world were actually selling it, and it gave us the opportunity to be more scalable because we're using the resellers to push those add-ons, and again, it gave you, let's say, the opportunity to go to places where you couldn't go before. Why? Because when we're competing against other ERPs, they said, every time they will go like, okay, we have the ERP, but if you want a WMS, we have a joint venture with this third party, or if you want a field service, so we have another joint venture with this third party. And we were coming with, the fully blown solutions and add-ons in one ERP system. And this was like the, let's say, major differentiator between all the other ERP systems.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Now we have, just to turn to the audience for a moment, we have, thank you to everyone who dropped in the chat where they're joining from today. I see someone from Tampa, Florida, Denver, Colorado, Pretoria, South Africa, beautiful part of the world as well. Belgium, Antwerp, etc. So thank you for everyone for joining here today. And also have an audience question I think is worth getting to here as you talk about your journey here, Eyal. How did you harness others in your journey? It seems like all great entrepreneurs need a village of support. And this is from Kyler on LinkedIn. What are your thoughts there?
What do you mean by employees or by
customers? Both. I mean, who did, it sounds like Priority and partnering with Priority and being an ISV of Priority, that was maybe an early driver of growth, but how did you lean on employees or partners or mentors? I mean, who did you lean on or rely on the most as you started to gain traction and as you started to scale the company?
The moment you have a company, first you start in your basement like a one-man show, and then you start hiring people. The thing I was telling at least people are trying to hire was, I'm trying to use cutting-edge technologies, bringing new innovation, bringing stuff that people failed before and haven't done this before. And this is how it actually attract, let's say, employees to work. And it was a challenge, because there were like other major companies that were offering like better salaries and stuff like that. But I was telling them, it's like, think about it, it's like a startup. We're called the Startup Nation. So we're like, you have everything was like, we're meeting people. I was meeting my employees on a coffee break and say, you know what, I have an idea. what happened if we'll do this and this and this? And, everybody wants to code it. And after a few days, there's a new product or a new feature. And I think the success of the products, the concept that I was always trying to push to everybody was if it won't be simple, it simply won't be. And the concept is that I think if we brought applications to customers and they start working with no explanation, it was like an immediate onboarding. I think this is something that was very, let's say, genuine at the time. Nobody had it. All the ERP systems were very complicated. So harnessing the customers and the employees that were actually involved in everything, we're actually visiting the customers. So we talked about boots on the ground, that we have to go to see how the product works, to understand the real challenges in each company. And this what drove us and the customers and my employees to make, let's say, simplified products, with the concept of, I mentioned, I think before to you, the single screen application concept, giving you an app that you can do everything in one screen. For example, if you take the WMS system, think about it that you give something to the storekeeper, and there's like one field called barcode. And whenever he scans something in this field, doesn't matter, you can scan a batch number, a barcode number, a part number, a serial number, a pallet number, whatever. You can scan one thing and everything is automated. He doesn't need to think about it. And if he does, and it fills the relevant quantity, it jumps to the next item. If he finalizes the list, it jumps to the finalization stage. Everything is, in an ERP system, you ask a question, you get an answer. It's not leading you, you're leading the system. We took it to a totally different concept. We're leading the users to the job. It could be for the field service, it could be for the storekeepers, for the truck drivers. But I think the way we simplified stuff, this was like the magic that, behind the concept of soft solutions, to make that brought the customers, the employees, and the resellers to actually sell it. It was an easy sell for them because it was an easy implementation. Go ahead.
No, that's super interesting. Now, when you look at the evolution of your company and then the acquisition by Priority, and you've been doing this now for what, about 25 years? You've sort of been in the tech space for maybe a little bit longer.
Even 30. 28, let's say, something like that.
Okay. You and I are the exact same age, so I'm just trying to do the math here of what I think your experience level is. But I guess my question is, what has changed the most with technology? Or what tech trends have sort of, there's been a lot, in 25 to 30 years, a lot of different things that have come and gone, a lot of trends that have evolved and grown over time, other things that have sort of faded and fizzled out. What is it like? How would you assess some of the trends that most excite you, both in terms of development and the evolution of the technology space?
Okay, so this was a challenging, let's say, quest, because we started up, with Microsoft. We were doing .NET, and then smartphones came out. So we said, okay, we need now to go to Java and start creating mobile apps. And then we wanted to do, went out from desktop to web. So we needed to do Angular back then. So we had multiple programmers doing multiple languages. And I was thinking, I need to find something that could be not only cross-platform, but cross-programmer too. And this led us to React and React Native. And we can have one platform for everybody to use and reuse. And then if you have you can balance between programmers because everybody is doing the same, working with the same language. And now, everybody's going to AI and data learning and analytics and stuff like that. So I think the next trends we're looking for is not only just doing cross programmers, is actually to innovate, find new technology you can merge with engines that you have out there, like ChatGPT, or if I'm doing, like I just published a TMS system, transportation management system. And we're not trying to invent the wheels. There's engines everywhere out there. So if I need an AI to optimize the route, I'm just consuming one of the SaaS services out there. And by the way, when I was looking for new things that I could do, I met with a few companies over here, some startup companies. One of them was actually doing the head display in helmets for helicopter pilots, and they actually minimized it to sunglasses. So I said, okay, this is cool. We can put this in the warehouse. But we tried it, and it said, okay, it's working, but there's a problem if someone wears glasses and stuff like that. So we're looking for more stuff. So the other stuff we found is something like with hands-free. You know, we're always trying to look how to make simplified stuff. So I was looking at this hands-free technology. It's like you have a watch and you have like a Spider-Man. It's like a barcode scanner with a video camera. So everything you do is you're like taking something and it's actually taking a video of what you did. And then you can put AI system behind it for vision to see if you took the right thing and put it in the right place. And again, there's a lot of new trends that we're working on in priority now to create, again, new innovations. This is the concept. I think you have to win tenders, to win new customers, you always have to bring something new to the table. We just, I told you before, we're competing with a very big ERP system for a big prospect in Los Angeles. I was there like 2 months ago. And comparing an ERP to an ERP, you know, it's very hard to win a tender because this is like, you know, apples to apples. The only way you can win is when you bring innovation. So what actually I focused over there was showing him the integrated WMS module. And I think the main focus was the simplicity of the app, not the brains behind the scenes, because this is what people are actually working in the warehouse. And the other thing is a very nice tool that we created was a portal generator. A portal generator, again, it's more innovation stuff, and it's new, I think, in the ERP tech. So it gives you the option to take any form in the ERP in a few minutes with no coding and generate a portal. And the portal is not for internal employees. It's for customers, it's for suppliers, it's for resale. So then now I showed them in a few minutes, say you have you saw the WMS system. Now you want your suppliers to upload the ASN, Advanced Shipment Notice. We can show them portal. We can do it in a few minutes. We want to put a television in the warehouse that shows the efficiency of all the employees. You can do it in a few minutes. You want to give them your customers now to create orders. One thing they had over there was they have sales reps, and to work in an ERP system, it's very, let's say, it's lean and mean. You open the sales order, you select items. They wanted an e-commerce, the shopping cart experience. So we took the portal generator. In a few minutes, we created a simplified user interface that gives them the option to create orders in the e-commerce style, in the shopping cart style. So again, all of these tools, you know, brings you new opportunities. And again, when you're competing with other ERPs, this is, I think, what gives today priority the edge.
Right. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. This is a somewhat related question from YouTube. This is from Ori on YouTube, and Ori asks more of a sort of a career-focused question, but coming back to the tech trends question that I asked a moment ago. But where do you think the opportunities are in the ERP and or the warehouse management system space over the next 10 years from the perspective of a person relatively recent in his career looking to be positioned for success? So where are the biggest opportunities in the enterprise technology space in general?
Well, I think today in the ERP and the WMS, there's going to be a lot of work. There's still, you know, everybody talking about automatic warehouses that, you know, you're not going to rely anymore on people. But again, this is big. This is when you have big pallets. I don't see in the near future that robots or technologies are actually going to replace people for, you know, specific picking. And I think there's going to be a lot of, combinations with AI. We are actually doing something new in AI with WMS. We have now a professor from the academy that we created something that does optimization for assigning tasks. So everything is going to be much more efficient. It's going to be much more optimized, but still there's going to be a lot of work in customizing the softwares and creating the add-ons. And we're going to we talked about the hands-free and the augmented reality with the glasses and all kind of AI tools to show, how to store, where to store where we have empty places and how to replan and stuff like that. So I think for the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities, but it's going to be combined with new technologies. We're going to leverage the new AI system, the new hardware system, the hands-free. So I don't see any decline in requests for, for programmers and implementers and people that actually need to do the real work, the boots on the ground jobs.
Right. Absolutely. And actually, you just triggered another question I had. I'll jump to it now. But the question I had for you is your sort of boots on the ground upbringing, as a mechanic working in the military. You probably have a different perspective than someone who maybe went the traditional route of college. Although to be clear, I think in Israel, isn't it mandatory that you spend 2 to 3 years in the military? So everyone does that regardless of whether they go to university or not. Is that correct, or is that misunderstood? Okay.
The moment you finish high school, you go for 3 years. It's mandatory. I think now maybe it's 2.5 years, but back then when I was with 3 years, and only after that you go to college, and then you start find a job and climb the ladder.
We're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software talking about his journey from being a mechanic to becoming a technology entrepreneur and pioneer in the industry. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Kyler Cheatham, and we're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software having a conversation about his journey in the technology space as a technology entrepreneur. Let's jump back into the conversation. You bypassed the college part. You did the military part because you had to partially, and so you did the military part. You learned a little bit about technology, and then you sort of started your company and moved up from there. How did that initial sort of foundation of being a mechanic and having that boots on the ground experience, how did that affect, or did it affect your view of how to build a technology company and how to build technology to solve problems?
Well, basically, it's, as I said before, trial and error. When you have to solve a problem, and me as a, let's say, company owner, I was the last person in the company that there's nobody in the hierarchy higher than me. So when I had a problem, I had to solve it. The moment I got a purchase order for a customer, that's it. If I knew the technology, I had to learn it, and failure was not an option. I have to bring the results. So trial and error, reading books back, when we started, I think there was even Google was just starting up. There's no ChatGPT. So the only way to learn is trial and error. And actually, when you do trial and error and you figure something out, it sticks. It's not like ChatGPT, you get something, you get the final result. You actually really understand how things work in the back end, how things work behind, how the engine is built. And again, we're talking about engines. There's real engine, combustion engines, and there's technology engines. So at the end of the day, it's part of it. This is virtual, this is physical, but it's the same thing. If you know how it works, if you know how to disassemble it, you know how to solve bugs, and this gives you the opportunity to think out of the box. I think if you go to college, you're getting they're pushing the education is pushed to you. They're pushing you to a strict way of thinking. And when I had a problem, I always thought about it. Okay, how can I solve it? I didn't have any tools to solve it. The only way to solve it was to do trials and error and to figure out the best way to solve it. And I think this gave me the flexibility to bring new stuff to the table. People, like I said, in hospitals, nobody solved the problem. How we can create an application that will serve all the departments. One database, when you have a totally different, orthopedic department is totally different than an internal department. Or an oncology department. So thinking out of the box brought me to bring this concept of questionnaires that gave the ability to create a CPR, EPR system for all hospitals. And everybody says, okay, this is exactly what I need, because think about it, the head of a department builds his checklist, and then all the doctors that actually do the, when you're starting up as a doctor, you go through multiple departments, and each time he's working in the same system, and it's actually what the head of department decided wants to show. And it's like, okay, this is my data, so people can rely, can connect. At the end of the day, I said the simplicity of stuff and making things, bringing them down from boots on the ground to see how actually people works. This is the sell. This is what actually brings people to work with the system, because it's something they can relate it. It looks like somebody thought of how they work in the warehouse, in the field, I don't know, in the web. It's bringing the way ordinary people work, and not like some engineer that I think I know the best way to solve a problem, and they'll do it. Even I had a lot of time arguments with my programmers because they went the easy way. They couldn't solve a problem, so they solved it the easy way. I said, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to. If somebody needs to do too many clicks, go to too many menus, it's not going to work. We have to work harder as programmers to make it as simple as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. What about now Priority Software and Soft Solutions combined are both sort of a tier 2 solution. And I don't want to get too caught up in definitions of the industry here, but a lot of times organizations will gravitate toward a tier 1 solution simply because they know the name. They know the name Microsoft. They know the name Oracle or SAP. And, it's just a well-known brand. Doesn't mean it's any better or worse. It's better known. So a question from Ryan on LinkedIn, it's a good one, which is how would you address a potential customer who is only considering tier 1 solutions, or maybe the household name solutions? Like, how do you overcome that in your world at Priority Software, especially knowing that you're big in Israel, you have a very dominant market share in Israel, but outside of Israel, some parts of the world, you're still trying to break into it and you're still trying to create that awareness. How do you address that? I mean, what's your message to a potential client who's only looking at the commonly known brand name software vendors?
I would go to the innovation part. What does it mean?
Right.
If I have a prospect, it'll take me an hour to show him not a presentation, a fully blown system with the portal generator, with the WMS, with the TMS, with all the add-ons. It says, I need warehousing, I need a customer portal, I need a supplier portal, I have sales reps, I have field service, I have production floor. I'll come and show him something that says, this is not a presentation. I'll take his logos, his pictures, his color scheme, and it takes me an hour to actually, configure the system and show him something that works. And he sees it and he says, okay, wow, this is exactly what I want. And now the focus is how easy it's going to be implemented, how flexible, how it's going to be, how it can be self-sufficient with the system. And I think the other competitors, it's the brand name, but they'll always tell you, okay, they'll show them, they'll show presentations, PowerPoints, and then they'll say, okay, you need a portal, go to buy it from our third party, or we have a vendor that will do it for you. Or at the end of the day, we're talking to them and show them that it actually works. It's not something that it's not a PowerPoint presentation. This is the system. This is how it looks. This is how it works. And let's do the whole flow and process. And this is the sell, because the customer says, okay, I have everything in one place. It's flexible. It's customizable. It's on the cloud, and that's it. I think most of the sales. I was in another, customer in the UK. I've been all around the world, trying to push our products, and we're competing with another major ERP in the UK. And he said, okay, I have like 750 field service people, and I need the option to work offline, and I need the option to work with questionnaires, and everything should be integrated. And the other company said, okay, we have the ERP, but this is our vendor for field service, for example. And we came and we showed him something. It's in Priority. We showed him, we took his data, we built his questionnaires. We showed how easy now to take pictures, load data, fill the checklist. And this is what made the sale. We're not a brand name. They didn't hear about Priority before, but when we show them something that will actually work, it's a minimum risk. It's something it's going to work.
Right.
It's working already.
Right. So more of a, being able to find that or offer that flexibility and that customizable or that tailored solution for a potential client. Is that what you're saying? That's one of the big strengths that companies like yours bring to the table?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you're bringing something that you have one-stop shop, No integrations. Most of a product, when you start doing integrations, there's always the problem of if now I need a change. So first of all, we're working with two different user interfaces because we have one product for the ERP and another product for, I don't know, WMS, field service, whatever. And now people need to work with two different user interfaces. Now we made a change in the ERP. We need to contact another vendor to make the change in his system, and then we need to fix the integration. So it's actually everything you're doing 3 times. Think about it, about the money, the time, putting things from doing QAs, going live here. It's a too many thing. You have a change request, you do it once, and it's if I go from the portal, if I go from the WMS system, I go from the field rep, I go from from production floor, it's using the same logic. And there's another very cool thing in Priority that can actually make it work. In Priority we have 2 types of APIs, what we call REST API. This is just for data. Most of the ERP system has REST APIs that you can talk to the ERP system, but it's just data. It's not bringing the UI logic. Priority we have what we call the Web SDK. Web SDK actually consumes the UI logic. So now Craig can create and take a different technology. Could be native iOS or Android, could be web, could be whatever, could be on a watch. And this will actually give me the logic. So if there is a rule in the ERP that I just created that gives me a warning, a message, sends an email, it will work immediately. Think about, for example, I have countries and cities. The moment I select a country, now it's limiting the cities for that country. When I'm working with a REST API, I have to rewrite in the front end the logic that the moment I read the country, now select the cities from the cities table. When I'm using Priority Web SDK, everything is reflected. So the moment I select the country, the control, the response that I'm getting back is already the city. So there is no logic on the front end. It means that you can actually build multiple front ends very easily, and no investment in in handling multiple logics. So it's really, really what we call single point of truth. This actually brought me. It was for me when I had my own company. It was what path should I take? Should I put all the eggs in one basket in Priority? Because the moment I put it in Priority, it means that I can only sell my products with Priority. It wouldn't work with any other. It's integrated into Priority. The easier way would say, okay, I'm just going to create my own third party and connect it to multiple ERPs. But then each time it's going to be an integration project. So the moment I went this way, it was a gamble. But this is what drove the test, and this would make Priority. Let's say I think it was very reasonable from their side too to do this acquisition, because it was actually the moment we have the whole scale of the company like Priority, and we're bringing this new technologies that will actually give better results for their end customers, bring innovation, bring the opportunity to to compete with other ERP systems, because we're bringing things that no other competitor has. Then again, it's a win-win. It's 1 + 1 = 3 in this situation.
Right. So as an entrepreneur, then, was it difficult for you to make that transition from being, because you've been an entrepreneur pretty much your whole career, a majority of your career, and then you sell your company to, presumably a bigger company. How does that change your life? Has it been difficult to adjust? What's it like? And I'm asking you not only because I'm interested because you're a founder, but I'm a founder too. And the thought of having to work for the man, sometimes that stresses me out. And I don't know if I would enjoy it, but that's just me personally.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how you adjusted to it.
Well, it's as I said, most of things, it's a challenge, because you're regulated. I was working like a startup. I was thinking, okay, I have an idea for a new product, and that's it. I'm running towards this product.
Go do it right now.
Do this, do that. Now I have a product department, and I have a delivery department, and I have a DevOps and R&D department. So now when I think of something, I need to go through all the process it take, bring people with me to sell them the idea. So it's a totally different way of thinking, because now we have to sell your ideas, to bring people to the table to actually, divide the job between them. You can't do anything. You can't take your own decisions now, because now it's a team. It's like you have to become a team player. So it was challenging, but I think we overcome it. when I was purchased from acquired by Priority a year and a half ago, I had a earnout of 2 years. So what happened after a year? So I was still managing soft solutions, but after a year, I already hit the maximum earnout I can get. So I finished everything a year early. So now I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? What's the next job? What's my next title? So as I'm coming to Sagiv, the CEO, and I said, okay, what should I do now? I'm doing a lot of stuff, but what is my focus? And he said, continue to do what you're doing. And I said, no, I need some focus. I need something to do. We said, so what do you like to do? What do you think you can do? And I said, you know what I like to do? I like to find problems in companies and customers, and I like to bring technology together with the problem and bring something to the market. I know R&D, and I have and I know business, and I know Priority, and I think the next thing, the logical thing to do in Priority is to do innovation, and find new technology partners and bring them up to speed to the technology. Even when I find technology partners, it's a learning curve for them. So I think I can shorten the path, and if you can, and can bring this new technology partners, it's a win-win again. You're bringing them. You have the scale of all the tens of thousands of customers we have for Priority, and then if we're bringing them to the table with this new technology, potentially they can make a lot of money. And again, it's a win-win. So what I'm going to do, I think, from now on is innovation and business development.
We're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software talking about his journey from being a mechanic to becoming a technology entrepreneur and pioneer in the industry. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'll give you anything.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Kyler Cheatham, and we're here with Eyal Katz from Priority Software having a conversation about his journey in the technology space as a technology entrepreneur. Let's jump back into the conversation. You use the word innovation a lot here, which is appropriate because I think it's really interesting to hear how you view technology enablement. You're doing it by finding the problem first and then figuring out how can technology solve it. Whereas I think a lot of software companies, especially the bigger ones, I think they get caught up and stuck in their own echo chamber of, what's right and what's wrong technologically, and sort of like what their philosophy is of technology in general. And they start with the technology and then they go to the market and try and sell it and sort of try and force it on the industry. And I think what you're saying is you're leading with what's the customer problem, how can I solve it, and then how can I sell it internally within Priority to productize that potential solution, which is different. I mean, it sounds easy enough, it sounds simple enough, but I don't think most software companies do that, especially the bigger ones. I think they do the opposite. They start with the technology, then they figure out how they're going to go sell it.
Yeah, I go to the problem and I say, okay, this is a problem that hasn't been solved today, and I think I can solve it. And if I can solve it, there's a new market. And this is I think I have one of my customers in this is an electronics company, and they called me, each time I come over there, they call me like the dream maker. Why? Because, each time they have a problem, they had this problem. I said, we're working with a lot of attachments. We're using Outlook, but it's very complicated to connect them to the ERP system. Could you solve this problem? Could you connect Outlook directly to the ERP system and the file system to our ERP Priority, actually? And I said, give me a day and two. And after I solved it, it said, you don't know the difference you did for the people working, in import and export and engineering. Now they can scan directly from Outlook, connected directly to Priority with, and again, it's something that was very problematic. You got an email, you had to save it. You had to go back to the document Priority, you have to upload it. Now with one click. Remember, single screen application, one click, and that's it. So we have this concept running with the WMS. We have this concept with the document management. We have this concept with the TMS. We just created this TMS add-on. So you can see the planning, you can see the map, you can see the trucks by dragging and dropping. Now you can see the whole route is building. You can see the mileage. You can see what time you're going to reach each customer. So, and everything you do is one screen. So this is all these concepts of, simplifying stuff, bringing it to people and coming from the problem, not coming from the solution, not thinking, okay, I'm an engineer. I think there's a problem. This is how I'm going to solve it. And then I'm going to come to the market. Here, this is the product. I think it should work.
Right.
It's the other way around.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. And that's an important thing to think about for those of you that are listening that might be trying to evaluate potential software vendors. I think that's a thing you have to look at is it a company that's focused on you and the solutions focused on you as an organization, or is it focused on them, the technology itself? And that's an important question to ask. What about career development? I want to maybe shift gears and talk about you looking back on your 25 to 30 years as an entrepreneur and working in the technology space. What career advice would you have for someone who's just starting out in the technology space today? What would you impart upon them? Words of wisdom, things you did well that you would do again, and maybe things you didn't do well, or maybe you screwed up and you wish you would have done differently. What sort of advice would you give someone who's just starting out?
First of all, there's no risk. It's not like you're opening a company and you have to buy inventory and you have to pay payrolls. You're just sitting by yourself in your basement or whatever. You don't pay rent. You're probably living in your parents' house or whatever, or you're in a minimum costs. So you can take any job you can, and the moment you're committed, there's no option for failure. If you get a purchase order for someone, you need to deliver. And this is actually what drives me. I'm looking at I have my 3 children now. So one of my child is learning Java. And, it's very, to try to learn something, to solve a problem that it's like a mathematical problem, something, it's very boring. You have to have something, you have to have a goal. So a goal is you have a customer and said, you know what? I'm going to prevail. I'm going to bring something that will work. And this is what drove me. When you have a goal, I think, and the only thing you can lose is your hours that you're spending. No risk. You have a goal. If it works, you're going to make money. If you're talented, you're going to make a lot of money. So Don't give up. I think, and this is something I can tell, to all the parents out there. Don't give up on your teens. I was the black sheep in my company, and in my family.
Right.
I have, by the way, an identical twin brother. His name is Eric too, and he went, he has a PhD in computer science. So he went the standard route, and now he's a CTO of a company. But again, it was a long route, and it's going to take him a long time to, hit his earnout, or I don't know, or the way of the retirement is going to be a long path that needs to take. So if you have the skills, if you have the patience, I think give it a try. And if you're not doing well in school, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe you have, if you could. For me, I'm like an autodidact. I like to learn by myself. I think this is the best way to learn. You have your own. You can, you have your own time, your own system. Just read the book, give it a try, and start as soon as possible. Jumping into the water. Start coding as soon as possible, because this is the only way. And when there's a goal, I don't think that you can miss.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you and your brother had such different views and approaches as it relates to traditional paths in education and things like that. You going straight from military to entrepreneurship, and then him kind of going the PhD route. That's an interesting contrast in approaches. Not that either one's better than the other necessarily, but certainly you've got to do what's best for you and what kind of fits your goals. But you mentioned something that's even more important, which is kind of have that end state in mind of what it is you want to do. Like, in other words, your son, he's not learning Java just to learn Java. He's learning Java because he's got some other end state in mind of how he might apply Java to his career going forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, he's looking at me and he says, he's telling my wife, why do I need to study? Look at Dad. And I think that this is bad advice. This is bad advice for children, but I think, everybody wants to do fast money. So I think this is the only way I can think of a shortcut. If you want to do a shortcut, you have to set your goals. If you have someone who's actually going to pay for your time, it's even better because this is going to what's going to push you forward. And what can you lose? What is the risk? It's not like you're taking a loan from the bank to you buy inventory or rent some place. I think this is the best route you can go.
Right.
Nothing to lose, and the only worst case scenario, you'll succeed.
Right. That's a good way to look at it. So I think you alluded to this a little bit a few minutes ago when you were talking about innovation and how you went to your CEO and said, what's next for me? How do I fit into this company going forward? And he told you, continue to do innovation and business development. What do you see beyond that? Is there anything else that you see next for your career and for the company? Anything that's sort of like on the horizon that you want to accomplish or that you're striving towards going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of new products now all the time. And I was thinking of something that is more like, everybody's looking today at graphs and charts and numbers. And now we're thinking of building a new kind of generator. We're talking about platforms. So we build, we have the WMS as a platform. We have the app generator. We have the portal generator that is a very cool tool. But now I'm thinking about something as like a visual generator. Think about it. You can take any picture that you want, upload a scheme of something, upload, the production floor of machines, upload a map of something, and create like rules of traffic lights rules, and then combine them together and change the way we look at things. Today we look at graphs and charts, and it's you have to drill down. It's very boring. It's very, let's say, it's something that it's hard to grasp if you don't know. And if you see something that is very visual, I think this is the next thing I want to try in Priority, how to make this visual generator that you can put rules and upload, specs, schemes, pictures, whatever, and combine them together. And of course, there's a lot of things I told you that I was doing with the AI, with hands-free that I'm trying to find it, from the glasses to the watch to AI with the video stuff. So there's a lot of things every day. I know when I do a tour with the customers, they say, what, we really miss something that could do this or could do that. And you start thinking, how could you solve this problem? How could you bring new innovation to the, to Priority or to the customers?
Right. Well, that's cool to think about, how on one hand, you have a more structured process that you have to go through being part of a bigger company that you described before, the R&D department and the business development and the finance department. Everyone sort of needs to get aligned with whatever investments you might be making from a point of innovation. But the good news is now you've got more scale. You can take these ideas and you've got more resources behind you. You can scale it up faster potentially because you've got a whole company behind you and an ISV network or ecosystem behind you. So that's kind of exciting to really maybe think to another level that maybe you weren't able to before because you were more focused on solving an immediate problem to bring home an immediate paycheck or an immediate revenue, whereas now you can think longer term. Do you find that shift is happening, in the last year and a half since you've become part of a bigger company, or am I off base there?
It is happening. I mean, only now because at least half a year ago, I was still managing soft solutions inside Priority. Now that I'm starting to deal with innovation, another thing in Priority is M&A. I think we acquired 6 companies in the last 2 years, and when you start to meet with startup companies that has new patents or innovation stuff, if it's something that is really interesting, then you have the scale behind you to actually acquire them in this seed stage, or actually invest in them to bring and to leverage this new technology or this new AI thing that now we're looking into. So of course, this is the power of scale. At the end of the day, you have the people, you have the money, and you have the opportunity to actually go and look for new interesting stuff. And there's a lot of out there. I mean, in Israel, there are, I think, tens of thousands of startup companies that have. You just need to find the right one, something that can actually. It's not bring immediately something to the market that can affect, I don't know, either purchasing or warehousing or trucks or even things that prediction and stuff like that. So you just need to look for it. It's over there. It's already out there.
Right. Now, how do people learn more about Priority Software? If those listening that weren't familiar with Priority before today, maybe they're evaluating potential options or researching potential software options for their organizations. How can they learn more about Priority Software? What's the best way?
I guess a website. You have a lot of stuff over there. We have, I think, a lot of YouTubes. We have a lot of webinars, and it depends. If you're looking for something specific, there's a lot of it's divided to industries and it's divided to modules. So if you're interested in something, you could just go to the website and even drop an email or something, and we're more than happy to demonstrate. And it's going to be a live demonstration, not a PowerPoint presentation. Say, right. I have a company, I want to solve something. No worries, you're going to see something. You're going to see the result already.
Wait a minute, I have to stop you though for a second, Eyal. Are you saying that some software vendors use PowerPoint for their demos? That can't be true. I'm kidding, but
it is true. Believe me.
I know. Yeah, I've seen many of those. It's funny how that works, right? And at some point, you have to see the real software. So that's a good point.
But even when you see the real software, it's not they didn't take the time to actually take the process and generate something that resembles how they actually work. And I said, because we have this, I talked about the portal generator. We have this thing to make it look like your own portal. Like the ERP looks like, with your color schemes and pictures and logo and everything. So it looks like something that was generated, built from the ground up for your needs. And again, this is what that makes this sell. People can connect to something that they know, that they're familiar with. It's not just the, boring ERP screens. It's something that looks like something that was built from the ground up for them.
All right. Thank you, Eyal. Appreciate your time. Great story and very interesting story, and love to have you back on the show. And we'll cover a couple topics that we mentioned and threads that we pulled on in the conversation. We're going to dive into in a little bit more detail here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm going to be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. And Kyler, we just had Eyal on the show, and really interesting story. That was sort of a first time, not only a first time guest, but the first time we've had someone on the show really solely to talk about their journey and their personal story of how they grew up in the space and the different options you have career-wise to pursue a career in technology, as well as what some of the technology trends are to be aware of in general. We also discussed that too. But what were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, well, I think you need a spin-off podcast of tech entrepreneurs because it's always a different journey. And I think it's a great overall showcase of the non-traditional paths you can take to a career in technology, or just having those ideas. So what a great energy of just overall inspiration and innovation. I know you guys talked a lot about innovation in that conversation and the importance of it. I think it's so interesting, the merger and acquisition overall conversation to the acquisition of his company by Priority Software, and him still remaining a part of it. I think that kind of speaks to the overall nuance of the culture that he built, and Priority kind of wanting to keep that as a main driver of the business. Is that kind of how you see that working out as well? A lot of times when you do acquire a company and you kind of want to keep the executive team, or you want to keep that culture, just to not only create some stability but build upon it because it's so successful.
Yeah, very much so. And there's we talked earlier about the McKinsey study about digital transformation failures. I know there's a McKinsey study that also talks about merger and acquisition integration failures. And I remember going back to when I was in grad school and in business school, we talked a lot about, in one of my classes, we talked a lot about mergers and acquisitions and integration. It's an area that always fascinated me and still does fascinate me. But the reason I bring it up is there's a study that I think is somewhere over 80% of merger and acquisitions fail, or they fail to deliver any sort of business value because of the failure to focus on culture and the failure to integrate the cultures. And what ends up happening is a lot of times you get finance people that just kind of look at the numbers and cents and say, hey, if we go acquire this company, it gives us X amount of revenue, it adds X amount of EBITDA to our bottom line, we can get more efficiencies, whatever. And it sounds good on paper, but then you look at the cultures and they just clash, and that happens a lot. And it sounds like he's found a way to avoid that, probably partially because he was a partner of Priorities, or an ISV, or a independent software vendor that focused on Priorities. So he was already sort of aligned with the company and the culture, I would presume. We didn't really dive into this in the conversation, but I would think that probably made it a little bit easier for their integration efforts than if he was just a sort of a random company that they had never worked with or didn't have a lot of experience with.
Absolutely. That's definitely something that you kind of get to try out, if you will, try out for the cultural fit and get to know the executive vision and things like that. So that's definitely a nice kind of perk of being involved in the community already. And I know he talked a lot about kind of innovation. You both did, and I'm wondering if you can kind of give us a lens or your feedback around how do you make sure that you keep a culture of innovation while staying grounded? Maybe as an entrepreneur yourself, you can answer that question, but also how you counsel executive teams for large global corporations that want a lot of innovation, because that's a great strategic overall alignment to have as an executive team, but also want to stay grounded in what your capabilities are, as we kind of talked about earlier, and what your overall business needs are. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Eyal hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, in terms of focusing on the sort of the customer needs first and what the problem is you're trying to solve, and then you could build a culture and build a company around that. I know with Third Stage, I was, at the time I started the company, and still am, very passionate about creating an independent consulting firm that helps clients through digital transformations, and one that really acts as an advocate of our clients, not as an advocate of selling certain types of software or peddling one sort of product, or even just a small subset of those products. So I think that's helped us have a clear vision of what kind of culture we have to create. For example, there's a lot of trust that people expect from us as a company. And so when we hire people, we have to hire people that aren't just trustworthy, but that you meet and you trust. I mean, you just like them, right? Clients have to like us. They don't have to just think that we're smart. I think we're all smart, but that's not why we're successful. We're successful because clients trust us, and because we're agnostic, and because we're not drinking the Kool-Aid of vendors in general or any one certain vendor. We're strictly looking at what does a client need, and now let's figure out what technology best fits, regardless of what the vendor community wants us to say or wants us to tell our clients. We look at more what the client needs are first. So I think that's where you start, is what the customer needs are, what you're trying to accomplish in your mission as a company, and then you build the culture and you build the team and the company around that.
Sounds simple. No problem.
Yeah, super easy. That's why I screwed it up the first time. My first company was somewhat of a disaster longer term, because I didn't focus on culture. I didn't have that clarity of vision and that sort of thing. So the good news is that I learned a lot from those battle scars to then take it to Third Stage to be able to start what I think is a much better company than anything I've ever been involved with.
Well, I think it's pretty cool too. And hindsight is always 2020, right? And that's why we talk about failure, so we can learn from them. And speaking of that, I think a lot of tech entrepreneurs has failed more than they have succeeded. So they're, a wealth of knowledge in that, in kind of building up that muscle of resiliency and innovation to keep moving forward and keep creating. So thank you for that great conversation. And, I feel like a little bit of a coaching session would be a great, option for you guys to kind of do around innovation in enterprise tech. So such a great conversation, and thank you for hosting.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for Eyal for being here, and great stuff he had to share with us, and some great advice too. So we appreciate his story. So we're going to take a quick break and bring our next guest on, who's going to be Kristy Barber, who is from the Third Stage Consulting team. And she deals a lot with our small and mid-sized clients. So she's dealing with companies that are on QuickBooks or QuickBooks Enterprises or QuickBooks Enterprise or some other more basic finance and accounting system, and they're looking to upgrade to something a little bit more robust and more of an ERP-focused enterprise-wide sort of system. So we thought it'd be great to have her back on the show. She's been on the show several times, but we thought we'd have her on the show to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks and things you should consider if you're using QuickBooks or any other sort of accounting and finance solution that you've outgrown and you're trying to upgrade from. This is going to be a great conversation for you, even if you're not on QuickBooks. So be sure to stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. My name is Eric Kibberling here with Kyler Cheatham, and you can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And you can also check out YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, where we stream new episodes every Wednesday. And you can also just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, though, to see all the different formats you can watch the show on. And you can also see past episodes there. So be sure to check out our library of 143 plus glorious episodes that you can find there. So excited for our next guest, Kristy Barber from the Third Stage Consulting team. She's been on the show before. She tends to specialize and focus on some of our small and mid-market clients. And so we thought we'd have her on the show to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. So I'll turn it over to you, Kyler, to sort of lead that conversation with Kristy.
Thanks so much, Eric. I'm so excited to have this conversation with Kristy Barber, who is our small to medium-sized business specialist. As we've been talking about a lot this episode about entrepreneurship, she's going to be a great guest to have on to ensure that we understand what is it like to grow and scale a business from a technology stack perspective. So with that, welcome, Kristy. I'm so excited to have you on. If you wouldn't mind, if our audience doesn't already know you, could you give us just a little bit of an introduction, your background, and your role here at Third Stage?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've been with Third Stage since the beginning. My specialty comes with small businesses. My background's in accounting, process improvement, looking at systems, making sure workflows are running in the best way that they can to make your business run efficiently. I love piecing all of that together. I come from an entrepreneurial family. For those of you that see me, I do a lot of stuff with small business for Third Stage. But yeah.
Yes, I think Kristy is the only one on our YouTube channel that has her own playlist. So congratulations.
Thanks.
to you. So today we're dissecting specifically QuickBooks, but as I kind of mentioned in the intro, there's a lot of implementation or software selection advice that you have in here for just scaling. We've seen, an astronomically high growth for that small to medium SMB tier in the last few years, especially when it comes to technology. So a lot of these different pieces can be scaled to other software. But with that, let's kind of get into QuickBooks. If you wouldn't mind giving us just a quick client persona that would utilize QuickBooks.
QuickBooks will be anybody that's just getting started. You may not know, how big your business is going to be. Maybe it's just an idea you had and you want to test it. QuickBooks is a great place to get started there. It requires minimal knowledge because the software will help you set up a lot of things on its own. Good or bad when you look at it that way, but it's nice for a business owner that's just getting started. It could be maybe you're making something as simple as jewelry and selling it, or you have a service that you're selling, and it's just an easy way to get started. But yeah, that's what I see most clients using it in the beginning.
So it's usually kind of a baseline system before pre-ERP, if you will.
Yeah. However, I had a client this year with Third Stage, $500 million company still on QuickBooks.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you. I have seen some, I would call them like lingerers, I guess, if that's not too creepy, in the marketplace that use QuickBooks to, a really astonishing revenue amount or overall, business process sophistication level.
Yeah, it's amazing what they end up using it for. And a lot of it is they have complementary softwares working along with it that help, whether it's managing inventory or it's a software that it's extracting data out to build better reports. They have a POS system that maybe is running separate and the data can come into QuickBooks to do. But I have seen a handful of companies. It's amazing what the software can do, because we tend to think of QuickBooks as, once you get about $4 or $5 million, you probably are outgrowing it, which is not necessarily the truth.
Absolutely, 100%. So let's kind of dig in. Let's start with the positive. Let's start with some of the good pieces of QuickBooks. When does QuickBook in a client scenario work really well?
Really well, I think, like I mentioned, when you're starting up a business, QuickBooks can help you set up your chart of accounts. It's going to give you the basic ones that you need. And then from there, you can go and customize it to what you need it to be. So that part's simple. It's really easy to sync your bank and your credit card feeds in when you want to reconcile everything. It's coming in. You can set up rules. So you see certain expenses that come in. You say, hey, this is always dues and subscriptions. I want to write a rule so that it always goes there. Piece of cake. You can also get the main reports that you would need, your profit and loss, balance sheet, and open AR, open AP. It has those. They're already made. You just click a button, it prints it for you. You can also export it if you're, a ninja at Excel and build out really cool spreadsheets. You can dump the data in there and manipulate it into what you want it to be. I think it's easy because most CPAs know how to use the software. When you share it with them, they can go in, they can make their tax adjusting entries for you. They can easily pull information they need as well. Trying to think, the other plus I think is if a business owner is just starting out, it's a software that they can kind of understand and maybe use on their own without necessarily building out a full team yet. It does get to a point, if the knowledge and the skill set isn't there, then yeah, you're hiring a team to manage it for you. But it's a pretty intuitive software, and over the years, how it's migrated from desktop version to online version, you're in the cloud, you can access it anywhere.
So it's a great kind of first step training wheels approach to starting a business. Maybe you're not, on the finance side quite yet, and it's still something that you could potentially manageably use. What about the support for QuickBooks? I would assume that that's something that a lot of kind of newer entrepreneurial businesses need. What does that look like?
They have a variety of different things. They do a lot of webinars that you can watch. Here's what QuickBooks is offering as far as, something new to the platform, or, watching videos and learning how to do things. They do have a chat that it can be helpful at times. Other times it's not, because you want to talk to a live person to kind of figure things out. They do have a live support where you can talk to somebody on the phone. It just depends what you're needing as far as is it beneficial to answer your questions. I've found over the years a lot of what I need is YouTube videos, and yeah, or it's something that I can just quickly chat QuickBooks on and say, hey, you know what? I had a client that paid me and for some reason the money didn't hit the bank account. Why is that? And then they look and they're like, oh, it got held up here. Let us release it. And then it comes through.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes
And I think that there's minimal integration type stuff as opposed to an ERP where you really would need
right.
extensive help to put all the pieces together.
Right, absolutely. And offering kind of those integrations, as you mentioned, kind of earlier in this conversation, that are attached to different areas of the business potentially. So let's go into the bad, and remember, we're going to go into the ugly. So what would be some maybe more negative or considerations when looking at QuickBooks?
Some of the things is around APIs. So a good example is TikTok. So people can sell items on TikTok. TikTok doesn't have an integration into QuickBooks yet. So you can't manage your inventory, you can't manage your fees, you can't manage your income. You have to manually put in all of those items each month if you want to have a good picture of, what it looks like. So I think there's some of that where QuickBooks technology, they're trying to keep up with all the trends out there. It might just be a tiny bit behind because the infrastructure isn't there necessarily to support it, where an ERP has open API and you can go pick up anything you want. There's softwares that you can pay to go grab the data for you. That's one thing. Second would be management of inventory. QuickBooks does not manage inventory. It likes to tell you it can, it cannot. It makes it way worse than you would see. And a good example is I had a client and they're trying to manage the inventory and they're writing invoices out of QuickBooks and it's not pulling out of inventory. It's just saying, hey, we sold all of these things and we don't have true numbers. And so for them, they decided moving to a third party company to manage all their distribution made sense. And then they just sent them an inventory adjustment report, each week, and they put the journal entry into QuickBooks. So there's things like that where if it makes sense for you, having a third party go manage all your inventory is great. But if the costs, outweighs what you're looking for, where you can do it internally, then you're having to shop around and say, hey, what software works complementary with QuickBooks in the meantime? Is it Katana? Is it Fishbowl? Is it, half a dozen out there that would work? So those two, and then lastly, I'll throw on the reporting. QuickBooks Online doesn't have the best reporting still. It's better, but desktop still had better ways to sort and look through the data. So you're still having to export it and manipulate it in ways that you need to be able to look at the KPIs within your company.
Sure, and that's always hard to standardize when you're, exporting a bunch of Excel sheets and then everyone's not quite aligned on the numbers that you're looking at as a business. So that all makes sense. So what about the ugly? I thought you were going to save the inventory to the ugly, but
technically that is ugly. Let's move it over there because it is really ugly and it makes life so difficult. And I mean, I did tax accounting for a while. I still do a lot of fractional CFO services, and I see that show up a lot, and it just makes me cringe because you don't ever have a true cost of goods sold. I don't have true inventory numbers, and if you don't have that, how do you know how your company's doing? And that's where when you move to maybe a more basic ERP system, it has that functionality, and all of a sudden you as the business owner and your team, you have more trust in the system and the numbers that it's telling you.
Yeah, and always inventory is such an important area to really have a tight grasp on anyway, with all of the shifting in the supply chain, especially for a small to medium-sized business, as you know better than anyone. Inventory is really hard because you may not have a surplus of capital to keep additional inventory on, or vice versa. You may lose sales because you don't have the the essential inventory. So that's definitely something that I would say is a huge drawback because it's a big need, for a business of that size.
And even looking at the costing of your inventory, some businesses, they do average cost, some do FIFO, some do weighted costs. There's all these ways that it can be done. QuickBooks has one way and it has to be done that way. So if your organization wants to move to a different way of costing out your inventory, that isn't there.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have inventory. Anything else on like the ugly side that is like a real drawback to what you've seen? Maybe like scalable growth is a lot of times what we see on that side.
Yeah, you get to the point where you outgrow it, and some of these companies that you see in there, 3, 4, 500 million, it's amazing what it can still do for them, but there is a lot of work that they're doing on the back end to keep the software alive. And a lot of times it's just, it wasn't the right time to scale, and then they just stay with QuickBooks. But I think there gets to be a point where the pain is so great with keeping a software that can't grow with you, it outweighs the pain that it's going to be to implement something better. And I've seen that a lot. You start to see, just, I think a lot of it is you don't trust the data. That's one thing. If you're in a manufacturing, you can't really build out a bomb inside QuickBooks. It's impossible. Things like that. It sometimes there's a lot of clicks, whereas when you're using an ERP software, maybe you can use tab, and maybe there's a drop down here and there. QuickBooks Online is still trying to get caught up with some of the better UI out there.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that a little bit. Like when you are ready to scale, when you are you've done that cost benefit analysis of saying, okay, we really are limping along, or we're using way too many internal resources to customize a process around QuickBooks limitation. What are some things that you should consider when looking at this? Might be our first ERP system. This might be our first kind of interoperable ERP system. We might have a bunch of different bolt-ons that we've been using. What are some main really strategic pieces that you need to look at as a business to say, okay, we're going to scale to the next step?
I think some of the big things are, well, first of all, look at your costs. What can you afford? And then from there, kind of get an average cost. What is this going to cost me? Can I afford to do it today? Do I have the bandwidth to do it? Do my employees, are they bought in that, hey, we've outgrown this, we've outgrown working off 200 Excel sheets, and we need something else? What is their buy-in? Those are two big things. And then I would say where the company wants to go, what those goals are. Can QuickBooks keep up with those goals? If not, then now's the time to look into like a ERP. And like you said, more of an introduction ERP. We're not going, SAP out the door. We're looking at something more like a Sage Intacct or a NetSuite or an Acumatica, something that's a lot smaller and can still grow and scale with you for a long time before you outgrow it. And even then, if you were to outgrow certain parts of it, the software can still grow with you. It's just a different version of it.
We're here with Kristy Barber talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. We're going to have a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say. Tell me, I've been waiting for so long to hear.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 144. We're here with Kristy Barber talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of QuickBooks. Let's jump back into the conversation.
Say you are considering maybe an Acumatica, maybe even like an Infor, an Epicor, or something like that to go to, because say you are something like heavy manufacturing. What are some questions within the evaluation process that you want to make sure that you're asking your vendor or asking your digital transformation coach, like our team here at Third Stage, to ensure that you're getting specifically on the finance side the requirements and support you need?
So on the finance side, you want to know, how does it handle RMAs? How do I handle if I need to put a hold on a client because they haven't paid me? How do I, link things in, do bank reconciliations? I would say on the finance side, 99.9% of all ERP softwares will meet your needs. There's those little unique things of what are in your finance processes and what are in your operational processes that might differ a little bit on the finance side, but more than likely your needs will be met. More so what you need to start asking questions around is the operational side of things, as well as, can this software do XYZ? Example, I write, my bill of materials, I have phantom bombs inside of it, I have sub-assemblies, I have kitting. How is it going to handle that? Because you always, and I think I've mentioned this on other podcasts, as operations is usually the driver of any ERP selection. Because as much as I love finance and I love all my finance people out there, we're not that important when it comes to picking a software. We have to get used to it and be able to make it work with the rest. But the operational side of it is what's so important.
So let's talk a little bit about that operational side, because you're totally right. Letting the business needs operationally drive the technology is going to be key there. Traditionally, and this is a total stereotype, but a lot of times accounting is notorious for having a lot of manual processes that often become automated when you do look at a new ERP system. So it's one of the departments that we see a lot of resistance just because of misunderstanding of roles. So can you kind of talk about how you get in front of that, or you work through that from a situational standpoint and a people standpoint if you are considering automating a lot of your accounting tasks with, say, this new technology?
Yeah, so I think the biggest fear always is people are afraid, oh my gosh, my job's going to go away. I got to go find something else. And it's more so, no, your job is still here. We're using your skill set in a different way. With a lot of new technologies are out there, especially like OCR, AI stuff, all of the invoices come in an email, it scans them, it puts them into your software, but you're still having to look and make sure that, hey, did they go to the correct GL account? Is this the correct vendor? Is the correct amount? There's that spot checking. So things have not been eliminated. It just may mean you're not spending 8 hours a week entering invoices in to be paid. It maybe it's 2 hours a week. And then your skills are used in another way of, how are we growing the company, from a financial perspective? How are our numbers tying in, and really diving into what do our numbers mean at the end of the day? Our costs, our people costs, our material costs, all of that.
Absolutely. And understanding that that's really on the executive leadership to define those roles and responsibilities, and more importantly, communicate them. You can define them all you want, but if they don't actually understand what they are, or you don't communicate them effectively, then that's where that business disruption, especially on the accounting side, which can be a significant disruption, whether it's accounts payable or accounts receivable, you need to make sure that you understand the shifting and that your frontline employees really understand that shifting.
Yeah. You got to have the buy-in from top down.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the accounting side. I know you had mentioned that they don't matter so much, but I think what you're so right on is that it is standardized, within the industry, but there's a lot that goes into those processes that maybe just one or two people know or really own or have that tribal knowledge around. You mentioned kind of the export spreadsheet pandemic situation where you have them all floating around and who really knows what's going on. So that's something that is important when you're considering switching to an ERP system, that all of that is going to be really housed and standardized within one core system. And it needs to be, because if those numbers are off, it throws off the reporting and analysis for the rest of the business.
And I think that's also things businesses can do in the meantime when they're prepping to move towards something new. There's so much tribal knowledge that lives in accounting departments because it's usually a lower turnover than other parts of the company, and people are very good and very knowledgeable at what they do. So you can start working today and drawing out what are those processes that we're doing today? What are things in our process that, hey, you know what, maybe this could be better. We could change this, and really refining what you have today in preparation. So when you do get a new system, yeah, a lot of the workflows are built into it, but you can bring in maybe some of those unique touch points that you want to have to highlight the culture of your organization, as well as whatever customer service the finance side needs to show their clientele.
Absolutely, 100%. That makes so much sense to just capture that as good business practices. A lot of times when we go in, especially, you on that side to say, do you need a new ERP system? A lot of times our answer is no, but you do need a lot of business process work and documentation of your processes and optimizations through that. But your current technology is serving its purpose, just your operations aren't serving your technology. So it needs to be a well-oiled machine, as they say. So you kind of talked about the good, bad, and the ugly, the considerations, the people side. Let's talk a little bit about the implementation or even deconstruction of QuickBooks. What are some things that you need to consider when you are moving from QuickBooks from a functionality standpoint to a new system? You kind of briefly touched on some of the things that you could be doing to prep for that. What are some other things that you should have in your strategy toolbox for implementation planning?
I would say first one is going through your chart of accounts. Do you have it set up the way you like it? Now is the time if you want to make any changes to it, add accounts, change a numbering structure. Now's the time to be able to do that in preparation to put into a new system. It's also a good time to go through and clean up your customer list, your vendor list, make sure there's no duplicates in there, make sure things are all spelled correctly, it's all the right contact information, because those 3 items will be pulled out of QuickBooks and put into the new ERP. All of your products and services that are listed out in QuickBooks, which are essentially your inventory items if they would show up on an invoice, making sure those are the SKUs set up the way you want them to be, as the naming conventions the way you want them to show up. Again, that's a good place to start because all the data is going to come into a new system and it's fresh, and you can put whatever process you want around that, whatever however you want to systematize it to fit those goals. And so there's a lot of just cleaning of data. And then from there, you can always keep, a subscription to QuickBooks for however many, years or whatnot you want to have it. Because with an implementation, you only bring over 1 year of data. And those are usually trial balance data items as well.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And with kind of our phase 0 planning checklist, that is one of the main pieces that we consider is that data migration portion. But I think for QuickBooks, a lot of times there's another layer because you are potentially, going into a system that might not match exactly what you've been doing before. And that's a lot of times when you come in, to help solidify and ensure that the business goals are being achieved and the future state target operating model is, really solid, as opposed to the vendor saying you need to do A, B, and C. So, there's definitely levels to understanding the needs and the requirements of the overall business. So,
and even all the data prep ahead of time, it saves you time and money as well, because your implementation team isn't waiting on you to, get things done. You're working on it ahead of time, which speeds up the turnaround time.
Absolutely. And so for a kind of a final question, and I know this is going to be an it depends question because it always is, but what are some metrics or some ROI or some, target value that you should be looking for when you do switch from QuickBooks to a new ERP system? What are some key metrics or key performance metrics that you want to make sure that you're monitoring?
I always look at, I don't know if it's really a KPI, but I always look at time. How much time are my employees spending on tasks? Has the new software eliminated some of those tasks because it's automated them, like you mentioned? Or has it made it harder and my employees are spending more time doing something, and is there a learning curve around that just because it's a new system, or is it clunky? And you want to be able to look at that, because I never want people to spend so much time that they get stressed out and they dislike the software, and the rest of the company loves the software because it's doing everything it needs for them. So that's one part of it. I think the other KPIs around it would be just your typical finance ones, that you would normally look at. How many days does it take for me to close out the month? Maybe with the old system, it took me 3 weeks. Now I can do it in 6 days. Like that's a great metric to see, because now the software is helping your team, and that the accounts are accurate. You believe in your numbers. You're not having to go back and make any adjustments.
Yeah, and you trust that data, which I think is a really great insight from this conversation. I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, when you do have a system that might not be as proficient, it is hard to trust your data, and then you spent all that time and resources going back to recheck, is this right? Is this right? As opposed to being able to fully know that you have good data going in, and then you have good metrics and strategic decision-making power coming out.
Yeah, it's huge.
Well, this is such a good conversation and so helpful for anyone that's considering moving from a more bolt-on type of application, or even a best-of-breed solution, to more of a core ERP, especially in that small to mid-sized business market. So if you do have questions about QuickBooks specifically, you can head to our website in the Thought Leadership section and search QuickBooks, or to our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, Kristy has a variety of videos that we've done on what that looks like, from a QuickBooks implementation to a migration to all steps within that, as well as some top systems for small to medium-sized businesses that you want to be sure to put on your short list. So thank you so much, Kristy, for joining us today.
Yeah,
and we can't wait to have you back again.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Kyler and Kristy. Thanks for that great conversation, and really interesting stuff, and always good to have Kristy on the show. What are your thoughts, Kyler?
Oh yeah, always great to have Kristy. She is certainly a wealth of knowledge, and I think a fourth generation entrepreneur herself in that. So it's a great kind of attachment to understanding what that looks like. And Kristy really kind of eats, sleeps, and breathes the third stage mantra of independence. If you've ever been in a meeting with her, she certainly has never backed down to a vendor or be scared to say what's best for the business. So she's such a great asset to learn from. I think with this conversation, Eric, it's one of those things where it showcases the importance of the requirements, the phase 0 planning, and the overall selection process. So as kind of follow-up resources that we always like to leave our audience with, I wanted to point out just a few that are some of my favorites when considering this conversation. We have the software selection buyer's guide, which not only goes through our top systems, but also how to select software, and is a playbook around that. So that link is below in the description, wherever you'd like to get that. You can also scan the QR code on your screen here. It's a free download that's available in the Thought Leadership section of our website. The second piece I'll give you is the phase 0 planning playlist. An overall checklist that we have that we mentioned in last week's episode. So if you want to hear more about that, go ahead and check out last week's episode, as well as scan the QR code here on your screen, as well as the link below to download those assets. So those are great if you're kind of in that consideration phase, looking at scaling up from something like QuickBooks, or even any sort of, smaller system that you're like, how do I need a core ERP, or what does that look like? So great resources to kind of walk you through that from a technology agnostic and independent standpoint. But big thank you to Kristy for that conversation. She's always a great wealth of knowledge, and available more on our YouTube channel if you want to hear more from her.
Especially if you're in the mid-market, high growth company, she's the person you want to hear from, or one of the people you want to hear from our team. And we appreciate having her on the show. So great conversation, and a great topic for sure. So thank you for guiding that conversation, Kyler. And thank you for a great episode. Thank you to the audience for the great questions. And thank you to our guests, both Kristy, Barber, and Eyal Katz. Appreciate having them both on the show. And again, you can check out new episodes of this show every Wednesday. There's new episodes. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to find those current episodes, as well as the past ones. So be sure to check it out there. So I hope you all have a great week. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll see you next week on Transformation Ground Control.
Tom.